Okay, so we'll start. It's Parashat CHUKAT. Today was Gimel Tammuz, the 30th Yortzeit of our Rebbe. It's unbelievable, 30 years. That I heard someone say, time goes fast when you're having fun, and then someone said, also when you're not having fun, it also goes fast. I thought we'd go through something tonight which is a bit of a test, but let's try. Parashat CHUKAT is a parsha with a lot of happening and a lot of commentary, a lot of learning. There are a lot of subject matters in it. Fundamentally, we've done a lot of shiurim on the three types of mitzvahs, mishpatim, edus, and hukim. And hukas is the name of one group of those mitzvahs, and it starts off with the very enigmatic and difficult coded mitzvah of the Parah Aduma, the red cow. We're not going to spend any time on that tonight. We've done that in other shiurim. But what this class of mitzvah requires is a very vexed issue, and that is the question of obedience. You know, there have been times in history, as everybody knows, where there have been levels of obedience that were required either by force or by fashion. We are living in times when obedience doesn't have a popular flavor. We have good examples of obedience leading to disaster. With the Holocaust, Germany the Nazis managed to perpetrate some of the worst evil ever in history, all in the name of obedience. So there is a legitimate reservation on what level of obedience we should have to what. And much of Torah in earlier generations stresses the need for obedience, the virtue of obedience to Hashem. And of course, that hasn't changed, we believe that, but this issue of obedience needs examination, and it needs to fit in with our logic and modern life, because the crippling aspects of force and discipline, making people obedient, is not a virtue. And you should know that in Torah it's not a virtue. Although, at the same time, there are things that we hang on to very dearly which do imply that obedience for its own sake is important. For example, when we got the Torah, the first thing that we learn is that Am Yisrael were so righteous because of Nasa V'nishma, which means that we will do and then we'll understand. And we know that if we have a mitzvah, for example, to put on film, there are two ways you can put on film, or three ways you can put on film. You can put on film just because it's a mitzvah, so you do it out of obedience, don't understand anything about it, don't know anything about it, don't know any of the halachas about it, don't know any of the secrets of Torah about it. You don't know that it strengthens your arm and that it it rationalizes your thought process and on your head. You don't know that it's actually something that frightens your enemies. Never heard of any of that. Maybe never seen a parrot film in your life. You're faced with the mitzvah of putting on film. You get Lubavitch, a kid stops you in Bondi Junction. Excuse me, you Jewish? Yes. Is it ever put on film? No. What's film? Put it on. It's God's mitzvah. So the guy will put it on. That's one level of observing the mitzvah, and we applaud it. Another level of dealing with that mitzvah is to learn all the halachas, learn all the secrets of Torah, learn all the Kabbalah. But until you put on the tefillin, you haven't done the mitzvah. So without any level of obedience, you don't even have the mitzvah at all, no matter how much knowledge you have about it. And then, of course, there's the ideal situation where you do have the knowledge and you do the mitzvah. But we learn that the mitzvah comes first, the nasa v'nishma, that we'll do it and then. So it does sound as though obedience to Hashem, for the sake of obedience to Hashem, is a virtue. And I'm not denying that it's a virtue. I'm just learning with you the Chabad Hasidus position that it's simply not enough. It's not enough for us to stop at the point where we are doing what we're supposed to be doing, and that's it. Now we can go home, take the football and go home. And unfortunately, there have been many generations of Jews who've been brought up in frum communities, who've learned to do what they do, and they do it by rote. They do it absolutely entirely by rote. And they don't live particularly fulfilled life. They live better lives than someone that doesn't. But they don't live the kind of life that anyone who learns Chabad Hasidus has an opportunity to live. So in Parashat CHUKAT, there is one extraordinary event which we're going to be learning together tonight. And very briefly, and I'll go through the Chumash with you in a minute, but very briefly, the story is this, as everyone knows. This is the story of Moshe striking the rock. To put it in context, Miriam dies. This is 39 years. We're one year before entry into Eretz Canaan. They've been in the Bamidbar 39 years out of 40 years. Miriam, who is the elder sister of Moshe Rabbeinu and his elder brother Aaron, dies, and there was a miracle in her merit for the 40-odd years that they were in the desert, that wherever they went, there was water. I mean, it must occur to you that the logic of them spending 40 years in a real desert with no water is an impossibility. So how do you solve that problem? So we have our tradition, which very fully describes the miracle of Miriam's wells, and from that well there was a rock, and from that rock came water. And in a place called Rephidim, which was 40 years before, Moshe, there's no water. The people come to Moshe and complain, obviously. And Moshe goes to God, and God tells him to find this rock and hit the rock, and water comes out of the rock. And that water endures, we are told, in the merit of Miriam as a miracle for the whole of the 39 years that they were in the Bamidbar and she was alive. But now she dies. So when she dies, suddenly there's no water. So there's no water. So Am Yisrael come to Moshe and they say, we're dying of thirst. What you took us out of Mitzrayim to kill us in the desert without any water. You made water last time with a rock. Give us water. We've got to have water. So Moshe and Aaron go to Hashem, and say, God, they're right, they need water. So Hashem tells him to go and speak to, we'll go through the steps. He tells him to take his staff. He tells him to congregate, not his staff, the staff. Come to that in a minute if we get the time. He tells him to gather the people together so that they witness what happens and speak to the rock. Now, for a whole lot of reasons which we won't have time to go through tonight, with the midrashic reasons, that one, the rock got misplaced with other rocks and the whole ganzmeister, but without going into that, he spoke to the rock, wrong rock, no water came out, so he took the staff, which remember Hashem told him to take, which we'll come back to, and he hits this rock twice. First time you get a little dribble, second time water, real gushing water. And Hashem says, because you weren't obedient to me, you're not going into Eretz Canaan. You're never going into Eretz Yisrael. Now you can imagine how Moshe Rabbeinu felt. He's been leading this group of people who give him nothing but trouble for 40 years. He loves them like his children, like his parents, like his brothers and sisters. And all he wants is to go into Eretz Yisrael. That's all that he's been living for. And all of a sudden Hashem says, you're not going. So in that year, between when this incident took place and he dies, Moshe Rabbeinu davens. We have a midrash that says that he davened 3 times a day, Ma'ariv, Shachris, Mincha, begging Hashem to forgive him. He's done tshuva, let him in. And Hashem doesn't let him in. So the ordinary, I shouldn't say the ordinary commentaries, I mean the commentaries that are on the Pshat literal wording, explain that at Moshe Rabbeinu's level, he was disobedient. Hashem told him to speak to the rock, and he hit the rock. And they go to Moshe's defense. They say, what do you want from him? There was no water when he spoke. And he remembered what he did in Rephidim before, and and last time Hashem told him to strike the rock. So he thought maybe he misheard, maybe he didn't understand. And then Hashem, I'll read it to you in a minute. We'll read it in English. And Hashem tells him to take the staff. What for? If he's not going to use the staff to hit the rock for, what did he tell him to take the staff for? So you've got to spare a thought for poor Moshe Rabbeinu, who's hit the rock before and made a miracle that lasts 40 years, 39 years. And here he is, and he's got the whole of Am Yisrael, 3 million people ready to die of thirst. And they're all looking to him to provide water. And he thinks he's talked to the rock and it hasn't worked. So what do you want from him? So he hits the rock and they have the water. So for this he should be punished, in inverted commas, by never going into Eretz Yisrael, and that's exactly what happened. So l'chaim. So we need to understand why. We need to understand why that happened, because Torah isn't a history book. It's not just a story. It's not a movie. You have Moshe Rabbeinu behaving in a certain way. It means that there's a level of Moshe Rabbeinu in every Jew. So it means that you and I have this implanted in our DNA, spiritual DNA, at some level. And we don't want to make the same mistake. If it is a mistake, and it is a mistake. How do we know? Because he doesn't get into Eretz Yisrael. Is that a punishment? Well, Jewish punishment is not getting beaten up to hurt you. Jewish punishment is a consequence. And the consequence itself is an opportunity for growth. But he didn't have that opportunity because he died. So the whole thing sounds very bewildering. And you should know that there have actually been libraries written about this. That every commentator that you've ever heard of has a section on this, trying to explain this, trying to explain the why he did it, what the consequences are. Was Hashem punishing him too much for what he did? There is so much on this. So let's just go through the simple wording. It's quite short, so I'll just read it to you. So Hashem appears to them. God says to Moshe, "Take the staff, and together with Aaron you should assemble the congregation. In their presence, speak to the rock, and it'll produce water. You'll produce water for them from the rock, and allow the congregation and their animals to drink." And I forgot to mention that. The animals. What's the animals got to drink for? Do we believe in cruelty to animals? Of course we don't. But we're talking about a point in history which is so amazing, and okay, we can't do animals, but don't forget we kill animals to eat. So if they have to die of thirst, it's terrible, but it's not as bad as people having to die of thirst. And then it goes on and says, Moshe took the staff from God, as he commanded him. Moshe and Aaron assembled the congregation in front of the rock. I'm pausing because this particular Chumash, I don't want to be critical of another author, but this Chumash has in brackets his understanding of what the commentators say. So you're not getting if you read the whole script here, you're getting his Torah, not the Chumash. So I'm trying to leave his commentary out. So, but he assembled them in front of the rock, and then it goes on that he hits it twice, and he gets the water. Okay. So let's deal with the animals first of all. Rashi says that the animals are a testament to the fact that Hashem protects a Jew's property. That in itself is very enigmatic, because we learn that physical property is the kind of consolation prize to spiritual endeavor. And yet, that's also not true, because at the end of the day, we ask Hashem for Gashmias. When Rosh Hashanah comes around, we are saying that we're doing tshuva, we're begging Hashem to forgive us for it, and we're turning over a new leaf, and we're going to be different people, and we're going to... And then, at the same time, we say, give me a Ferrari, give me some more money, give me better health, give me nakas from my children. And the commentators all say, that's pretty unseemly? How can you stand here on the holiest day of the year, or on the day of judgment of the year, and ask for toys? So it's explained in Chassidus that they're not toys. Why does a Jew ask for Gashmias? So he can elevate it. The reason that we want Gashmias is because we know that our role in life is to be involved in that Gashmias, to elevate it. So that's why we're asking for it. The code for that is in this thing about the animals, where Rashi says that Hashem protects the property of a Jew. Why? Because the Jew needs the property not to boast, not to be self-indulgent, not to gratify himself, but to elevate. That's a different pathway. We're not going there. We're talking about this concept of obedience, and the last three Sidras go together in a way. They're tied together with this common theme. You have Parsha Shlach, where we learn about the Meraglim going into Eretz Canaan, charged with the job of finding out the best way to conquer it, and coming back with an Eitzah, with their own advice. They said, better not to go. We can't win. And we've learned that, who asked them? What was the sin of the Meraglim? Who asked their opinion? Nobody asked their opinion. The opinion they were asked for was, what's the best way to get the job done? What did they come back with? An advice on whether we should do the job or not. Nobody asked them that question. Of course, if you were here for those shiurim, or if you want to listen to it on the tape, they were holy men. They had wonderful spiritual motives. They didn't want to go into the land and be forgrobbed with daily physical life. They wanted to stay in the Midbar and daven to Hashem and sing his praises all day and night, learn his Torah and do his mitzvahs, and what could be a better life than that? And they were punished, and Am Yisrael was punished severely because, and again, punishment needs understanding, but we got a negative result out of that. Why? Because nobody asked their opinion. Now, I want to share with you that I was at a Farbrengen once, 100 years ago, with a man older, he's dead now. His name was Rabbi Aryl Serebradsky. He was one of the big Hasidim in Melbourne. Panimi, very, very deep man, and he Farbrengen for 2 hours, I kid you not, on this one thing that the Meraglim did, that they were asked to find the best way to do the job, and they came back and said, take our advice, we can't do it. And the question that he was saying was, who asked them? Who asked them? And why is that so relevant to you and me? Because, and he explained, I can't do it now, this was a 2-hour Farbrengen, and I couldn't do it properly anyway, but so that you have the kernel of what he said, the gem of what he said. And if you take nothing else away from the shiur tonight, this will do. He said, of course, what we're taught, because Torah is nitzchis, because it's eternal and it applies to every Jew in every generation, this story is applying to you and me. And what is this business of the entry into Eretz Canaan to vanquish the 7 nations, which we learned are the 7 emotions? What is this all about? He said, that's your and my life. And when you and I are faced with a problem, the answer to that, hey, hiya, darling. That's my married daughter, Tova, who has 3 children, and my Tova grew up in this house and doesn't remember a Tuesday night without the shiur. So, and she's now, anyway, so let me go back to this point from the Farbrengen. So he said, this is your and my life, and when you and I have a problem, an issue, a challenge, and you think, I can't do it, you have to ask yourself, who asked you? You think you give yourself your challenges. You think you give yourself your hashgacha pratis. Who asked you? That's your job. That's my job. How do you know? You wouldn't have it otherwise. You wouldn't have it otherwise. And he verbringed about this for 2 hours, let me tell you, and it was another thing and another thing and another. But this was the kernel of the message. The kernel of the message is, what right do you suppose you have to say, I can't do it? It is absolutely impossible to even talk like that, let alone think like that, given our belief system. Our belief system is that there is a God who creates the world, and he creates it every second, microsecond, and he creates everything in it, which means that he has to be controlling everything, otherwise he wouldn't be bringing it into existence. And if he's controlling everything, he's controlling you and what's happening to you. And if unless he's a sadist, what's happening to you is for your benefit. And if it's for your benefit, who are you to say, I don't want it? Who are you to say it's too hard? It can't be too hard. By definition, it can't be too hard. It can be too hard for the next guy, but it can't be too hard for you, otherwise it wouldn't be happening to you. So what was their sin? Their sin was a sin of a group of people who didn't believe enough in Hashem. If you want to analyze where they went wrong in the same way you and I go wrong every day of our lives when we have a problem that we don't welcome, and obviously we're human, so we don't welcome it. But it's the same mistake over and over again. It's a lack of betochen. We'll come back to that in a minute. Ultimately, it's a lack of betochen. You want to say to have a level of betochen that high that I was learning this with one of my grandchildren, and I said to him, what would you do if it was late at night, this boy is in yeshiva, it's late at night, and you guys are finished in the Zal, and you're not ready to go to sleep, and you want to go down to, he's in Melbourne, you want to go down to Danieli's, which is a beautiful free plug for Danieli's, beautiful hamburger joint, and you're dying for that hamburger. You get to the shop and the shop's closed, or the last hamburger's sold. Or I asked him a question, do you feel disappointed? He said, of course I do, Zaidi. I said, but do you understand that if you get what we're learning properly, you can't feel disappointed? Or you can overcome that fear, because you know that the place was closed by Hashem on purpose. So he said he looked at me and he said, come on, Zaidi, who can live like that? And that's a fair question, fair thing to say. But you should know that there are people who do live like that. Reb Aryeh Serebransky Oliver Sholem really did live like that. And they have a different life. You got to know that. They never know the meaning of anxiety, never know the meaning of fear, never know the meaning of disappointment, never know the meaning of depression.
Or stress.
Huh? Or stress. What's stress mean? Stress means that you're having trouble prioritizing things that are happening to you, right? You don't know whether to answer the phone or go to the door. When you understand that those things are happening to you by design, there's nothing to stress. You can deal with it in various ways. You can try and deal with it all together. It's not going to work. You can prioritize things. That's good. You have a better chance. But to get upset?
No anger as well.
Huh?
No anger.
Sorry?
No anger.
No anger.
No anger.
No anger. How can you have anger? You're walking down the street. Someone slaps you in the face, right? It's normal to be angry. It's normal to be angry. But if you learn that you are getting that slap because Hashem is dictating that you need it, then the only question is, why does this fellow give it to me? You're allowed to sue him for damages. He's not allowed to hit you. So you're allowed to sue him for damages. But you're suing him for damages not because of the fact that you got the hit, You're suing him for damages because who says he has to be the one to deliver the it's like a postman and a letter. You're getting the letter anyway, but who says he has to be the postman? So if you understand that, then although he's liable to you in damages, what are you angry to the postman for? He's just delivering the letter.
So you're saying there's certain people that for them there's no room to grow?
Nothing to do. On the contrary, they're growing all the time because each one of those incidents are used for further growth. It's not.
If you deal with every challenge,
Menachem, it's not that it's not a struggle. It's a struggle for itself.
for sure.
It's a struggle. But he wins the struggle, whereas you and I don't. And our growth is that we want to start winning the thing, and for him, it is that he does it each time. Anyway, we're going away from the shir, so l'chaim. The next, last week's Seder was Parshas Koirach, which was on somebody causing machlokas, a big punish. And that was an individual. We did that in detail last week. I don't want to spend tonight on that. But now we come to Moshe Rabbeinu. And before we start that, you need to appreciate this, that the Rebbe explains that this whole commandment from Hashem, that he should take the people and take the staff, congregate the people. Now, let's understand what that means, to congregate the people. Rashi explains in 3 places Am Yisrael witnessed a population miracle. What does that mean? You've got 3 million people. 3 million people on one of the other occasions they were told to go to the gate of the Beis Hamikdash, of the sanctuary. The gate's 10 feet wide, and 10 feet tall, let's pretend. You got 3 million people. How can 3 million people come to that gate? How are they going to see what's going on in the gate? So Rashi explains that's one of the 3 miracles. One of those 3 is this. Hashem is telling Moshe that he's got to speak to a rock to bring water, and there are 3 million people that he is commanded to bring together to witness it. How can 3 million people witness him talking to one rock? You see the football stadiums when at a football match, and you wonder how they can even see the football, let alone 3 million people. That's 90,000 people were at the. My grandson tells me at the football, at the AFL. 90,000. What's 90,000? We're talking about 3 million. So. And he's told to take the staff. Now you should know there's a library written on what staff that is. Are we talking about Moshe Rabbeinu's staff that he used to take them out of Mitzrayim and he used for the miracles, for the makois, the 10 makois? Or are we talking about Aaron's staff, which is last week's Sedra about the almonds growing? I don't know if we haven't got time to go back on that, but and the resolution of this is we're talking about Aaron's staff. We're talking about a wooden staff. Right? Now, but the whole story.
Didn't Moshe throw his staff into the Yam Suf?
That's Moshe's stuff. We're not talking about that stuff.
We didn't get it back. We did.
Do you know? I don't know. I've never heard whether he got it back or not. It was made of sapphire. That I know, not wood. Um,
Still there.
but this whole episode, the key to this whole episode, the Rebbe explains, is that we are talking about the welfare of Am Yisrael. Now, there is nothing more sacrosanct in Gashmias than the welfare of Am Yisrael for a Jew. You and I are brothers. We share a common soul. We share a common consciousness with Hashem. We have a neshama is a helik Elokah mimal, a part of God Himself. And our welfare has got to be supreme in our minds. So, for instance, when we start the davening every day, we open the davening with a statement recommended by the Alter Rebbe in the Siddur that we use, that before we start to daven, we express the fact that we embrace the mitzvah of loving our fellow Jew as ourselves. So, and that is, we learn the gateway to getting access to a higher level of godliness. So, when we're talking about the welfare of Am Yisrael, we're talking about this is a different plane altogether. Let me share this with you. I learned Gemara, or I was taught. It's too conceited a way to talk to say I learned. I was taught Gemara by Rabbi Kurlov every Sunday morning for, I can't remember, 25, 30 years. And he's a tzaddik, and I promise you that every word he says, it's bankable. He told me the following story once. He told me that his mother-in-law, Rebbetzin Goldman, is a teacher in a non-Chabad, anti-Hasidish school in New York, in Brooklyn. And one day, a girl comes to see him. I'm sure I've told this story in the shir. I don't know whether shir or in a fabring. Anyway, if I can see some people are nodding, so be patient. It won't take long. But the point's a very important point. That she was a teacher in this school. One of the senior teacher and one of the young teachers, who was a very pretty girl, came to her and said, Rebbetzin Goldman, would you do me a favor? She said, what? She said, I believe you go to see the Rebbe for dollars on Sundays. She said, yes. She said, would you ask him for a bracha for me for a shidduch? I'm 22 or 23. That's old in religious life. It's not like today that women wait to be 35 to be married. And she said, and so she says Mrs. Goldman says to the girl, why don't you go yourself? And the girl said, look, I can't go myself because I have my reasons. That's why I'm asking you to go. So Mrs. Goldman, Rebbetzin Goldman agreed, and in the queue she says to the Rebbe, could she have a bracha for so and so for a shidduch? The Rebbe stops, and his warm, smiling face gets very serious. The two bullet blue eyes bored into Mrs. Goldman's soul, and he said, tell that. And then he said her name and the name of her mother. Tell her that she has to do tshuva ilah. Tshuva ilah means super duper high level tshuva. So Mrs. Goldman goes out of there, and she doesn't and he doesn't give her the bracha. So she goes out of there, and now she doesn't know what to do. So she goes and asks her husband, Rabbi Goldman, what should she do? Should she tell the girl the truth? She's embarrassed to tell her the truth. that she doesn't get the bracha, that she has to do children. What's she done? She murdered somebody. What's she done? So Rabbi Goldman said, you have no right not to do what the Rebbe said. The Rebbe said to tell her to do children law. You have to tell her to do children law. So she's dreading it, but the next day the girl runs over to her in the recess in the kindergarten and says, no, did you get me the bracha? And she said, look, I'm embarrassed with this, but this is exactly what happened, and she repeats it. And the girl bursts out crying, and she says, I'll tell you what the story is. This is a Misnagdisha school, and I wanted to progress in the school. And in this school, you get brownie points for putting down the Rebbe, and therefore I said bad things about the Rebbe. And so Mrs. Goldman said, well, maybe you should. So anyway, the girl went away, and a month later she came back and she said to Mrs. Goldman, please go to the Rebbe for me and tell him that I've done Shuvah, and he will know that I have. And so she went back for dollars, and when she came to see, she couldn't say anything. The Rebbe said, no, and how is the girl? And she said, she asked me to tell you that she's done Shuvah, and he gave her a dollar for, with a big smile, $1 for. Now, why did Rabbi, and she got married, of course, and had children, etc., etc. Why did Rabbi Perloff tell me the story? Because we were learning this concept, that the brachas to Am Yisrael come down through the Moshe Rabbeinu of the generation. And if the Moshe Rabbeinu of the generation isn't a clear pipe, Am Yisrael suffers. The Rebbe's not interested in his covered. The Rebbe doesn't care whether she's criticizing him because of him personally. The Rebbe is concerned that the pipeline for the brachas to Am Yisrael shouldn't be interfered with in any way by somebody, and every Jew has a power, koyach. She has a power to curse. So that's the reason. Now, this story with Moshe Rabbeinu and the water needs to be seen against that backdrop, that we are talking about the welfare of Am Yisrael. How do we know? Because of these clues. First of all, let's talk about the staff, which was Aaron's staff. Now, Aaron's staff was a physical manifestation of a miraculous event, right? That it was a dead piece of wood, and it bore almonds. They bloomed overnight. Fundamental to a Jew's spiritual service to his God is the fact that we have to work with Gashmias. Nobody asks us to go and sit on a mountain and not have anything to do with. That was the mistake of the Meraglim. Our job is to go to work every day and encounter all the gangsters and all the thieves and all the liars and all the people who are going to give you trouble and all the people who speak badly behind your back and poison this and poison that, and our job is to get through all of that and elevate that as we go. And we learn that whenever we access miracles, and every Jew does, because the mere fact that we're alive is simply a miracle, Am Yisrael High, how is it possible that we've outlived every host nation that's ever had us? Without an army, without money, without power, without anything, because we are connected to Hashem and His Torah. So this that Am Yisrael have this connection is a miraculous connection, but it must manifest itself in Gashmias. You have to be, and you have to care about the Gashmis, like they care. The animals got to drink. They needed the animals to drink. So it's no good saying, well, I'm going to take the bounty, the physical bounty that Hashem gives me and throw it all away. For example, we have to give tzedakah. So how much tzedakah? So the halakha is you have to give 10% of your net income net income after tax to tzedakah. Minimum. Maximum 20. Why maximum 20? Because you have no right to give it all away. Who are you to throw away God's presence? Who am I not to appreciate that? We have to take that remaining 80% and work with it and do good with it. Can't throw it away. So the staff is a symbol of the fact that we have to take our miracles with Gashmias. Why were all the people assembled? Because here was a critical position that a miracle was being given for the whole of Am Yisrael, for their welfare, and they needed to see that the Moshe Rabbeinu of the generation was doing as Hashem told him to do. You know, the Frierdiker Rebbe, our Rebbe's father-in-law, previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, was in a place called Kostroma, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly, and he was given the death sentence, and then it was commuted to life imprisonment, then it was commuted to a few years, and then finally a few weeks. He was allowed to be liberated on Gibel Tammuz, today, same day that the Rebbe passed away. And he did go. You know why? Because it was the Shabbos. And he would have had to be on the train on Shabbos. And the Rebbe was very seriously troubled by that. We have a record of the Rebbe asking the Frierdiker Rebbe, on what basis in halakha did he have the right to do that? Because every 5 minutes in this place was a sakana to life. And you're not allowed to commit suicide. You're not allowed to take your life in danger. If you can escape a death position, you have to. That's part of our legal system. So the Rebbe didn't understand how it was possible that the Frierdiker Rebbe could indulge himself in not leaving jail. Listen, I mean, you're talking about great people here. Not leaving jail because he didn't want to break Shabbos. And breaking Shabbos, you should know, is trumped by pekuach nefesh, by life. So the Rebbe, Frierdiker Rebbe explained to the Rebbe, when the Rebbe was a young man, why he did it was this, that when you stand alone against the forces of annihilation of Am Yisrael, which is what the Frierdiker Rebbe stood against Stalin and his henchmen alone, right? It's amazing. With all his power, with all the murders, with all the gulag, who won at the end of the day? Am Yisrael Chai. Here we are, learning the Frierdiker Rebbe's Torah and the Frierdiker Rebbe explained to him that if he had got on that train, Am Yisrael would never really have believed him, and therefore it was pekuach nefesh for Am Yisrael. That's why he didn't get on the train. And if you know. I'll give you another example. You have a shliach in a town, and the shliach is representing the Rebbe, and he's telling you to overcome your Yetzer Hara for whatever it is. Girls, women. Let's take that. He doesn't have girlfriends. The shliach doesn't have girlfriends. Right? It's not his Yetzer Hara. And he's telling you what a holy Jew he is because he doesn't have. But he goes and cheats in business. What do you think of him? What do you think of his Torah? What do you think of his shlichus? What's it all worth to you? You say, for you, for your needs, you can do what you like, right? But you preach to me for my Yetzirah. It's not your Yetzirah. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't cheat another person like that. So the critical thing that Am Yisrael was entitled to expect from Moshe Rabbeinu was that he be this conduit from Hashem to them, uninterrupted. Like when the Rebbe was upset with the girl, uninterrupted. We can't have anything in. And when Hashem says, speak to the rock, he's got to speak to the rock. He can't hit the rock. He can't say, I've got a better way. If he says, I've got a better way at that moment, the whole of Am Yisrael is in danger. Forever. And that's his sin. That's the sin of Moshe Rabbeinu. And the commentators also. Now, is that for you and me, would it be a big sin? For you and me, it wouldn't be a big sin. For you and me, we'd be very lucky to have a rock, and we're very lucky to have the staff, and very lucky to get the water. But people are tested at their levels, and he is the leader of Am Yisrael forever. And the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu is repeated in every generation, and is ultimately going to be the neshama with Mashiach. So this is an awesome responsibility, and to the extent that he knocked on he used the stick, that was a failing for Moshe Rabbeinu, not for you and me, but for Moshe Rabbeinu. And that's why he wasn't allowed to go into Eretz Yisrael. Now, in Eretz Canaan, the Rebbe says another fascinating thing about that. He says, with little children, when they're naughty, I know that this isn't consistent with current child welfare regulations, and I'm not criticizing them, because if people aren't good people, then if they use force, then the force can come from a bad place. But in a really good, healthy, wholesome parent-child relationship, the Gemara says that if you don't strike your son from time to time, you're ruining him. Now, but who can you? When do you strike him? You strike him when he's young and stupid, hasn't learned yet. Explains the Rebbe, Am Yisrael were young and stupid in the Bamidbar until that generation died out. But this generation is a new generation. It's an adult generation. And an adult generation, you don't hit with a stick, you talk. That's why I had to talk to the rock. It goes on. It's endless. It's endless. It's endlessly wise. But fundamentally, this episode needs to be viewed like this: that when Hashem gave him that instruction, that was an instruction for Am Yisrael forever, and he failed. He failed to that extent, and Am Yisrael didn't witness this. And that's why you and I still struggle with B'tochen, because you've got to know that the pathway to health and happiness and nachas and everything is pure B'tochen, like we learned before, is to be able to overcome everything, as Menachem was saying, in a way of absolute trust, that otherwise it wouldn't be happening to you. So it must be for your benefit. If it's for your benefit and Hashem is serving it up to you, Eiza Mokum Ladaigas, where is the room for worry? Where is there room for stress, as he said? Where is there room for fear, as Vic said? Why? Because that is our pathway. That is our relationship. Fundamentally, that is a Jew's relationship. It's a simple mantra. Did Hashem create the world or not? Yes. Is he creating it every second? Yes. If he's creating every second, does that logically entail control? Yes. If it's logically entailing control and it's happening to you, is it happening on purpose? Yes. If it's happening on purpose, and what about the bad things? So we learn, you read it, sorry, Khalil, that every descent is for the purpose of an asset. And every negative is so that you can grow through the positive. And what about when you say, we have 1 more minute, so let me try and deal with this, which is controversial, quickly. What about the guys who say, well, I can't trust God because he's let me down? Many times he's let me down. My father lost all his money. My mother died when she was with this. My sister is broke. What about that? So the answer to that is there is evil in the world. And the evil in the world is caused by Hashem. Otherwise it wouldn't be there. But it's for our good. Hashem's not a sadist. We don't understand that it's for our good. Who says we've got to understand? I use the example that I heard from someone in Brisbane, of all places. He said, you take the family dog. I'm sure I've used this in the shoot before. Take the family dog. The family dog gets fed by you and loves you, and you love the dog, and the dog loves you, and he sleeps in your room, and he sleeps on your bed, and he licks you and cuddles, and you walk in the door and he barks and he's happy and he's so happy to see you and he loves you. And that's terrific. But show the dog your balance sheet. This is the example he used me. What can the dog make of your balance sheet? Nothing. Why nothing? Because he doesn't have the equipment. So we don't have the equipment. We don't know what happened in a previous Gilgul. We don't know what's going to happen in the next Gilgul. We don't know what Hashem's priorities are. We don't know where this leaf is going to impact in Russia or in Greenland or in New Zealand. We don't know. It's not our business. Our business is to trust Hashem absolutely. And we learn that the more we trust Hashem, the better our lives are. Now, if Moshe Rabbeinu stands up in front of 3 million people that he's been asked to gather, and he does something which shows a tiny lack of trust to the extent that he can hit the rock rather than speak to it, he's failing Am Yisrael. And that's why he's not allowed to lead us into Eretz Yisrael. Is that a big criticism of him? We can't criticize him for that. But you need to understand the story, and you need to understand why it happened. And it happened because the welfare of a fellow Jew is paramount for us. It goes together with the patoka that we are required to have. Equally, we have to have this level of Ahavas Yisrael. So, like we said, it's easier said than done.
Robert, following on that,
Yeah.
the hostages.
The hostages, yes.
Following on that, their welfare is paramount.
Huh?
Their welfare is paramount.